this too as a discussion, but it would only be for the PS2. All in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Moving along. Just the last item, Brent, is the
That's right, and it was just, I put it on in my staff report tonight to First Council that, you know, the partners, now that we've come to some sort of resolution on how we're moving forward with the preferred option, just pointing out the fact that we've been working without a joint agreement from the board, accepting the transfer order since January 31st. So I thought it might be just a good refresher to remind everybody that because this is a new project going forward, we may want a new agreement, similar to what we had in the past.
I think the board had we had a recommendation that they got together and looked at what was salvageable out of the mediated agreement, and then that got put on the back burner again. Kind of someone, no, we'll just wait on this till the working group comes. We're asking, I guess, recommending that we start working on that agreement because it could take some time as well.
I agree. I think we need to move ahead with that agreement, get whoever's responsible
Cost shares and everything
to move ahead with it, and if you need a motion, I can make that motion.
Okay, I'll take that motion. Second by Dave. Questions on that? All in favor of that? Carried. Anything else? That report. 5.3, I guess. We have a presentation by again Win Renero, Condition 2, condition assessment.
Yeah. I have a few extra handouts. Everybody get a handout?
I've got a copy. Everybody had a copy. It's not all of them are color copies.
Yeah, these ones are color. I don't know. I'll sell them for a buck.
Thank you.
Here, you can hand them.
Yeah. Okay, Colin, I guess.
Does anyone need to stretch yet? I was told I had about half an hour. Can you just let me know how much time?
10
It's
minutes.
still appropriate now. 10 minutes?
I don't know. How long?
I'll try not to bore you. I'll just try
We've
and
all
get
had the
this-
presentation. We've got it, or we've had the information, but please take us through it. Take what time is needed, and I'm sure there'll be questions.
Okay, thank you all for the opportunity to speak. My name is Colin Weave. I work with Gamsby and Manro Engineers, and I'll be speaking about the PS2 Grand Bend PS2 pumping station and the condition assessment we conducted over the past year. We were retained by South Huron as part of the Grand Bend area sewage collection EA. We did this condition and passed the assessment. Now we also looked at the flows through the station. We did quite a bit of work at the predictive flows and current flows. At this point, this conversation will focus more on the technical aspects, the condition of some of the equipment in the station. And if you have questions on the flows, you can address those too, but that's not the focus today. I'll just briefly show this. When we do condition assessments, there's a lot of different things we can address. I guess you all know, like the 6 blind people looking at an elephant, there's different perspectives on what is important. And here, we're going to talk a lot about the physical condition, but there's risk management issues. How do you maintain it? Is there enough redundancy? So we looked at most of these things in general and gave our recommendations. If we jump in directly to the physical station itself, There is one gravity sewer collecting the majority of the sewage from Grand Bend, Oakwood Park, Grand Cove Estates area. That is 18 inches in diameter. There's a dry pit and a wet well arrangement. This is the same way I would design a sewage pumping station today for this size. It was built in 1978. It's divided, so the wet well has a minimum number of equipment in there. It's a confined space. Nobody likes to work in there because of the risks of the confined space. It's harder to, the air quality and so on. And you need to have a team on top to witness you as you work. There are 3 pumps in the dry pit, which are 40 horsepower. They're easier to maintain because they're in the pit beside the wet well, not in the wet well itself. In the control building, there's a generator, and there's a surge tank, and a 3-kilometer force main, which is 14 inch in diameter. So if we move on to this basically shows the force main. It follows Highway 81 and then down Mahler Line to the existing lagoons. So the pictures on the right show the pumps themselves and then the outlet box at the lagoon. Just make sure I've covered everything in the notes. This really is the main artery for Grand Bend. I want to be sure you recognize that. There's no other route for the sewage to leave Grand Bend. Here's the force main profile. There's a small creek halfway along. The scale is exaggerated here, so it doesn't dip up and down quite as steeply as it looks. The sewage comes in. Here there's an overflow pipe. I'll show a picture of that later. So should the wet well surcharge because the equipment isn't working, there is a risk that the sewage, instead of backing up into people's basements, it will overflow into the adjacent water drain. And that's a preventative measure to prevent overflowing into people's basements. Now, there's 3 pumps here in the dry pit. They pump through the force main to the lagoon. We have the surge tank immediately on the same property. There's 2 air release manholes that are at high points in the system, and they just let air out. And then at the creek crossing, the pipe goes under the creek. I can maybe show you, just go back a couple of slides. This is the facility itself, but the surge tank is in this concrete chamber, which is an underground vault. And that chamber stretches all the way up to here, this whole area. So inside the building itself, we found that the building structurally was in good condition. The valve chambers are in good condition. There's no real concerns with the concrete itself. The wet well is a confined space, as I mentioned before. I guess the issues with confined space is you need a rescue team. You can see we have a lifting device there at the top of the opening. You need to wear a harness. You need proper ventilation. So getting people in and out of that space gets tricky, and it often becomes a neglected area in your infrastructure as far as maintenance is concerned. Here is the overflow check valve going to the Walker drain. It's cracked. Everything is, I guess, it's 30 years old, but it's like an old car with low mileage. Most of it hasn't seen a lot of really hard use. So there's corrosion, but it's still working. Inside the wet well itself, this is a screen that's been taken out of the way. Normally we see either some kind of a grinder or something to pulverize anything that would come through the sewer. The screen's been removed. I think the operators have found that there hasn't been that many problems with the pumps plugging. There's not a lot of rags, or you don't see industrial waste here like we would see at some other lift stations where the pumps tend to plug with rags. There's these are sluice gate valves